let's take a look at this first rhythmic approach that you could use for a song like this. Both of the approaches I'm going to show you are going to work together, by the way, and make a nice two guitar part kind of thing. So if at all I'm playing one rhythm part, feel free to try playing the other one over top of it and just kind of see how they match up. So first, I'm going to go low. I'm going to kind of go low and twangy and use a lot of suspensions and some dissonance. So I'm going to start with a D chord that's using this low triad voicing here, the fifth on the bottom. And I really like these low voicings with the fifth on the bottom because they always kind of sound like faux baritone guitar to me. So I'm going to establish a little melodic figure. I'm going to start playing that. Play the open G against it. So now I have that suspension of the 4 against the 3. And I'm going to follow the bass line to that B minor. And then kind of answer. So here I had that da, da, da. Here I'll have the da, da, da. They feel very symmetrical to me. So I'm always trying to be conscious of that stuff. Second time through, I'll do the same thing. This time I might change it up a little bit. Okay, you notice I wiggle the guitar sometimes, and I'm doing that to add vibrato. It's my shortcut to not having a Bigsby on the telly, so sometimes I'll push this a little bit. I'll use my hand here, and I'll get some of that vibrato that's almost like a Bigsby, very subtle kind of Bigsby thing. Okay, for the turnaround of the G to A, I want to continue introducing suspension sound, so I got a G, you could say a G sus2, or you could say a G add 9. I would call this a sus2. I'm going to do the same thing for the A. Nice big open. And then for my turnaround of the D, G, D, I'm going to use this voicing of D, and I'll show you why in a second. A little arpeggiation there. Reach out to the G. So now you see why I use this G, because it turns it into a G sus2 only by changing one note. So I'm using like pretty good voice leading there. Okay, and anytime I have a lot of chord changes happening, I try my best to find notes that aren't changing. I'm always trying to do the opposite of what's happening, and that just balances things out. Speaking of which, the second rhythmic guitar part here, if I went low on this part, second time through, I'm going to go high. And I want to do something that's very constant and not necessarily a melody, but something that could kind of fade back into a track. So I'm going to take the fifth, the root and the fifth of the D, and I like these A's and this D because they're going to work over, almost all of these changes without me having to change much. And I'm going to do a arpeggiation. Any kind of constant arpeggiation would pretty much work. But here I'm going to go between the D and or A and the D, and then walk down 3 times. And I added a little ADA at the end there. Now here comes the B minor. Technically, all these notes will work fine for B minor. They're the 7 and the flat third of B minor. But I'm going to change this one note here to B just to kind of reinforce the B minor. Back to D. Now for the G, I'm going to keep these 3 notes because it's going to make it sound like a G add 9. That would be the 3rd, the 5th, and the add 9 up there. For the A, I have a choice. I could go back here and it could sound like a A sus4. Or I could have played the B and the C sharp. Sometimes that will work. Sometimes that's going to sound good. That's a little too dissonant for me for where this is in the song, but so I would stick to this. And then we're back to our D, G, D turnaround. So for there, pretty easy. D, G add 9, D. Okay? So you have two parts that are acting totally differently. One is very melodic and very low and twangy. One is this constant arpeggiation, finding a lot of common tones so we can kind of sink back into a track. Yeah, so let's move on to some of the licks that we would use over a track like that.